Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about some gaming stuff that you think you may need. You see maybe on Instagram, really awesome setups, expensive GPUs, crazy networking. As a gamer, do you really need them? We're going to talk about stuff you actually need and some stuff that just looks cool, but at the end of the day, you probably don't need it. Hey guys, Thiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button if you like content like this. So today let's talk about some stuff that you often see on Instagram. I'm guilty of it myself. I'll post like a killer awesome setup. Now, people don't necessarily need all that stuff, but there's some things that you look at and you're like, I wonder how that would be to use, to own. Is it really necessary? Is it overkill? So let's talk about some common things that we see in different videos, different YouTubers, and on Instagram, and we'll see if it actually makes any sense to own. Now, the first one is near and dear to my heart, and that's the water-cooled setup. Now, anytime anybody sees an awesome computer, be it like a case labs full of water-cooled GPUs and CPUs, you have radiators and RGB fans everywhere. I know when I first got started and I was just building regular computers and I saw that, I thought, man, that's the promised land. I want to climb that mountain. And now after years and years of doing water-cooled builds, is it worth it? Is it something that we just see and it's completely unnecessary? I think here's the caveat. If you're an enthusiast and you enjoy the process of working on your computer and actually building something with your hands, a water-cooled system is the best that you can absolutely do, bar none. If you're somebody who's looking for the best price to performance, if you want a system that you just turn on for years and you don't have any maintenance or you don't really want to bother with it, then I think it's probably a bad investment of your time and your money. Now, in my opinion, are the temperatures worth it? I think so. For example, most GPUs you can get down significantly. From air-cooled, maybe it's 60 or 70 degrees Celsius on an air cooler. If you water cool it, a lot of them with a nice setup will go down to as low as like 38 Celsius, 40 something Celsius under load if you have a pretty big water-cooled system. So in my opinion, especially with the RTX 3000 that run extremely hot, it's definitely worth it. For the CPU, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, yeah, you can get a few temperatures, lower, like with a Threadripper, even a high performance AMD or Intel CPU. But where the real magic happens here in terms of the performance is actually going to be at your GPU. And don't forget silence. You can tune a water-cooled system, even one with 16 or 18 fans, to be really efficient and silent. Now, even though water cooling, you will have your pump, it's actually very efficient the way it gets rid of the heat. So you can run the fans at very low RPM, especially if you have very high quality radiators, and you can basically game right next to a big tower at 4K Ultra if you're playing with 3090s without having any issues at all. So to answer the video's question, is it worth it having an awesome water-cooled setup? Yes, if you enjoy the process and it's in your budget, but no, if you really are looking for price to performance solely, then it's going to be a little bit of a stretch. You can always do price to performance and enjoy the setup and do water cool. They're not really, different at all. But most of the time, if you're purely looking for the best performance for your buck, you don't mind a little extra noise and the aesthetics of water cooling don't appeal to you, then it really isn't going to be the most useful thing that you can actually do. So let's get on to the second one, and that's almost connected to the first one. Do you need a high performance GPU? That's all of the craze right now. Do you really need a 3090? In my opinion, I really don't think so. Now, unless you have a GPU that's very old, maybe something from, like a 960 is going to start to really struggle with a lot of games. Even something like a 1070 is really going to start to struggle if you're trying to play at 1440p or even 4K. But even if you have a 1080 Ti, I still think you can comfortably play a lot of games and you don't necessarily have to make the jump to even a 3070 or a 3080. Are those GPUs better and faster? Yes, of course they are. But they're also more expensive, and with the drought that we have now with GPUs, considerably more difficult to get. Now, if you have a 2080 Ti, I wouldn't even bother in many cases, depending on the game that you're playing, paying overpriced GPUs that are out now. I would definitely wait for the price to come down. So to answer the video's question, is it worth it when you see somebody with two 3090s or a single 3090? For the aesthetics, if you like SLI and if you're going to water cool it, that's a whole different game. But 3090 3090 is not really that great performance for the dollar. Something like a 3080 or 3070 definitely would be the sweet spot in terms of newer hardware, but you can certainly get away with a nice 2070, 2080 Ti, even a 1080 Ti without many issues in most popular titles today. So just because you see all this new stuff and you can't get it, if you have something that's fairly powerful from a few generations ago, you can definitely still be quite okay. And now the third thing that you often see, and a lot of YouTubers will have really complicated sort of networking setups. In fact, Ingenious recently sent me this multi-network switch that can do cloud networking and all this fancy stuff. Is it something that you need for your gaming setup? Well, something like this oftentimes is even more meant for businesses. If you're running multiple computers, you want to have everything connected, maybe like 2.5G or even 10 gigabit networks. You want to have everything connected to one system, access it from the cloud in order to be able to see exactly how everything's performing. A lot of people connect surveillance systems and something like that. So for those type of purposes, something like this Ingenious multi-switch can actually be extremely handy. But how about having sort of a switch like this for your own gaming setup? Well, then I think unless you really have an elaborate setup with multiple computers and multiple devices that will actually take advantage of having that high speed and networking, maybe you have surveillance systems in your personal environment, maybe you're even using a NAS, you can definitely connect it to something like this and have sort of full control of like a personal home media server. In that case, then I think it would be pretty cool to have something like this. But the caveat here is if you're just a gamer, basically all you need is one Ethernet switch to the back of your computer, or maybe even Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi has been getting better during the last few years, where some gamers are even trusting it more and more. So if you're a gamer, I would just stick to regular Ethernet. If you see all these setups on YouTube and they have really crazy networking switches and things like that, if you plan to do more in your home, like have a NAS, which I recommend to anybody doing content creation, or even if you want to have like a home media server, if you want to run your cameras and stuff like that, then that's when you can start to look at something like this Ingenious switch. Something like this is actually going to be very, very useful. You can manage it via the cloud. You can have multiple applications. If you really want to get a little bit more intricate with your home networking setup, you really have to broaden the uses that you're going to be using it for. You basically have to have like a home media server or something like that. But aside from that, if you just want to game and you see these type of setups, and trust me, even me, when I see it, even when I just want to game, I want to have these cool lights everywhere to feel like I'm in the Matrix or something like that. Even though I'm just gaming, it's awesome having all these switches like you're in some type of control center. It's really not necessary unless you start adding capabilities where you can actually take advantage of something like this. Now, let's go on to the next part that we often see in really cool setups. That's going to be different standing desk setups. Now, this one is one that we often see with various different types of desks. You can have regular wood or even like metal desks. And recently, I even got a Liam Lee standing desk where you can build a PC in it. Now, that's a project that I'm working on currently. And while I think that's extremely awesome and actually makes a difference ergonomically, so you can stand up, you can sit in different positions and really be flexible with how you move it around. Not to mention, if you can put your PC in the desk, that's awesome as well. If you're basically just gaming, I think you're fine with the most regular desks that you can get like at IKEA or something like that. Unless you want the flexibility to be able to stand, to stretch a little bit, it's really not going to be completely necessary, even though I think it's an awesome perk and luxury to have a standing desk because you can constantly sort of change around what you're doing. It's much better to be able to have the option of changing your position. The really big caveat here is that these standing desks are often going to be more expensive, especially one that you can build a computer in. They're going to be considerably more expensive than just a regular simple desk, but you can get some desks that do have manual control and even some automatic control for a few $100s. So not all of them are really all that expensive, and in my opinion, it does make a nice difference to your gaming setup. You just don't need the most insane expensive one. You can get away with a pretty reasonable desk. Alright guys, so I just wanted to talk about some items that we often see, myself included, like on YouTube, on Instagram, of really awesome setups. See what's worth it, or at least try to give a little explainer, some food for thought for people considering getting certain things like more expensive GPUs, water-cooled computers, these different networking setups, and even standing desks, so that you can see, alright, maybe it's not something that's completely necessary, but it does make your gaming experience a lot better, or at least your environment if you're going to, work and do games and things like that. So it's just a little feedback and thought on things that I've actually done myself, just to give you guys a little different perspective and experience. Alright guys, so remember to smash that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.